Greetings to all. Welcome to another episode of Real Football Vibes, where we keep it real on the beautiful game. This weekly program brought to you live on Facebook and YouTube. And today, our topic: the impact and effects of racism in football. That has been fiery hot all week since last Sunday. As we would recall, England lost their first final they would have been in at the international level since capturing the World Cup in 1966. And expectations were extremely high throughout Great Britain. Sad to say, it all disappeared within seconds of the final whistle blown when Bukayo Saka, the young 19-year-old English born, muffed his penalty. Three penalties that were all muffed by players of color. And we all know what took place after that. There was great eruption. England was not the said England again. The fans took to the streets even before the game started. Fans were trying to make their way into the ground, scaling fences, something we will see in these parts of the world, in Guyana and around the region. Not one would expect such a behavior in the Great Britain. So today we are going to be looking at the effects of that. And we know racism is not confined to football, but it just shows the power and magnitude of the beautiful game. The rippling effects of such behavior has touched all parts of the earth and in fact stretched its tentacles across the Atlantic to North America, where Trinidad and Tobago battled their way to a goalless draw against Mexico amid calls and discriminatory taunts being hurled at them. In fact, the game was stopped about 3 times. Subsequently, Trinidad had to apply to CONCACAF, appeal to CONCACAF to provide some security for them as there were threats being made to their players. It has become real hot where football is concerned, and again, grabbing the attention of the entire world. But football now being used as a scapegoat for something that has existed and still permeates many of environments, racism. According to my good friend in Trinidad, the word race suggests a physical competition, has nothing to do with color or ethnicity. But we battle with it. Today I'm blessed again to be with another esteemed group of knowledgeables of the sport. And for the very first time, we'll be having one who is no stranger to Guyana, the Caribbean, and the world at large, where football is concerned. One who has excelled and has really carved a name for himself. And there are even calls now within certain parts in this country calling for his return. Let me say a pleasant day and good afternoon to my friend from Trinidad and Tobago, Technical Director, Coach Jamal Shabazz.
Hello, good to be on the program, Ross.
Yes, give
Are you
thanks
hearing
for
me?
you joining us and sharing your views, no doubt. We also will leave the Caribbean and go to New York, where he is now, but he's based in Atlanta, former national junior and senior player, writer. He's a farmer. He's so many things, making use of his twilight years, so to speak. James Paul making his second appearance on Real Football Vibes. Welcome again, James.
Thank you, sir.
Good to
It's a
have you.
pleasure
Good
to
to
be
see
on
you.
the show.
Glad to know your flight from Atlanta to New York was safe and you arrived in time to be part of Real Football Vibes. Appreciate.
Thank you,
And
sir.
last but certainly not least, the man who could be considered very much part of Real Football Vibes now. This perhaps his fourth appearance, if my memory serves me right. And last week, of all the predictions, Coyote McKinnon was perfectly right in his predictions with the outcome of Copa America and the Euro finals. Coyote, you must be smiling broadly all now, having predicted those results. You were the only one when we were all against. Good to have you again.
Hi, good day. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for having me on the show again, Russ. Good day to everyone listening and to the panel.
I notice you're sporting a bright red shirt. Is it because Jamal is on the program and you're showing some allegiance to Trinidad?
You know, it's the
Just
second
joking.
home. That's second home. So his second home is Guyana.
It's
So
part of our national flag, so you're entitled to
yeah,
wear.
yeah.
So, my brothers, a very topical issue that has grabbed the world attention. And so we'll go straight to England, where obviously there are continuous reactions to what is taking place. But we're going to listen carefully to a former national player of England, Caribbean by birth, Jamaican by birth, and also one who would have come back here in the Caribbean and done some work, as well as an Englishman of white ethnicity. Let's hear what they have to say in their reactions.
In the Euros 2016, Harry Kane was up front. Rooney was in midfield. They went out to Iceland in the round of 16. Raheem was 21 and he played. The horrific abuse Sterling got from the media, from the fans, online was relentless. He called himself the hated one. I was in a DM group on Twitter. God knows, I don't even know who put me in there. But Gary Lineker was in there, Tom Watson, Owen Jones, Faisal Islam. Anyway, Gary Lineker told us that he was on a plane with England and some supporters were on there too. And one of them said he shouldn't be playing for England, pointing at John Barnes. He's England's best player. They didn't care. He was black. Raheem Sterling, he isn't just England's best player. He's only little, but he's everything a human being should be. He's extraordinary. Boots like magic. With the whole weight of the Tory media, the Prime Minister of the country, with the Home Secretary encouraging fans to boo the incredible act of going down on a knee, begging you, please change. White lives matter. Don't listen to the media. We are all the same. Stop the phony culture war. Stop being racist. It's up to white people. Black people shouldn't be telling you not to be racist. It's up to you to dig in your heart and your soul. It's up to you. It's up to me. It's up to all of us. Raheem Sterling, he's the greatest player that has ever played for England. Ever. Best player in this tournament anyway.
And we should be having the other one with John Barnes as well. Could we have both, Mr. Technical Producer? The piece by John Barnes as well, and then we can react to that.
You cannot get rid of racism in football as long as it exists in society, because football is a part of society. So unfortunately, we do it in the wrong way around. We're looking to throw before these racist football fans, as people like to call them, who are they? Are they doctors, lawyers, milkmen, postmen? Why don't we look at those institutions and say, you have racist members in your institutions? Why is it football? This is the problem we have. We throw it at football's door rather than looking at society as a whole, and that's what we have to do. Because the Euros comes around every 2 years, the World Cup, the football matches once a week. What is happening in society every single day? Through jobs, employment, education, that we're not tackling. We're just blaming football. Do we not look around and see the world that we live in? But we absolve ourselves of responsibility and tackling the real problem by looking at it from a footballing perspective and say, oh, let's just tackle it in football and all will be well. People not racist. Laws have been around to stop people stealing for thousands of years, but they still do it. You have to change the perception that we all have about black people, about women, about gay people. You cannot look, laws can't change the thing because there are always ways around those laws. And it starts by looking at ourselves. Here we are 18 months later, not talking about why they're taking the knee. We're talking about whether they have the right to take the knee or not. Why don't we start that discussion and start the discussion about why are they taking the knee? Because of the injustice, not just George Floyd, but towards black people, towards women, towards gay people generally. And let's tackle that issue. But we're not. We're tackling the issue now as to whether someone has a right to take a knee or not.
Yes, some very emotional words and expressions there from former England player John Barnes and the English fan supporter. Coach Jamal Shabazz, give you the honor of opening the innings here. Your own thoughts, views of what transpired in England, and your reactions to what was said. Obviously, you would have been listening to those two comments. Your impressions, thoughts.
Well, I think John Barnes is spot on, and this is the crux of the matter, because clearly, the racism in the society, it really just comes out on the field in moments when people feel it appropriate to show that we're different. I'm a Muslim, and Allah says in the Quran that we made you into different nations and tribes, not that you may despise each other, but that you may know each other. And verily, the best among you is he who is most righteous. So, colonialism, one nation conquering other nations, especially the European nations conquering Africa and owning the Caribbean, has brought about this. And I think that, our efforts to survive in these countries and what we have contributed to these countries go to naught in situations like these.
Coyote, anything you'd like to add to that? Your thoughts, impressions on the whole scenario?
I think you always got to go back to the root cause of what you're saying. I oftentimes say, culture, form, belief system, and to me, it's not an attack on a color, but I think it's a behavior of an ideology. It's a behavior of a mindset, which started with the colonialization of who were inferior and who were superior. And I think what you're seeing, and to the guy with the newspaper, why a group of people are not treated with the same energy and intensity when the errors are the same, because it's a clear definition of what superiority look like and what inferiority look like. And I think this is what we have failed to address. It's not surprising for me because it's a culture, it's a mindset. It's, we talk about the Bible, train up the child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. And anything that is taught, it forms philosophy, and it creates this mentality. Even though it might not be right, it still creates this mentality. And I think this is what I've seen and what I've experienced over all these turbulent times, that we continue to make it about color, but we're not really focusing on the mindset of each and every human being.
Indeed. James Paul, I know you definitely would have your perspective and your thoughts as to what transpired here. What's your reaction, and having heard John Barnes's take, what's your reaction? And I know you've been following what's happening there.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Ras. And I must say, greetings to Coach Shabazz, whom I've heard a lot of, and I've interacted with on social media. It's an honor to interact with you live on Real Football Vibes, sir.
Yeah, man,
And
same here.
yes, and brother Coyote McKinnon, you're doing some great things, man. I've been following you on social media, so it's an honor to be with you on the show. Thank you.
God bless.
All right. So, Ras, where do I start? Um, I think you touched on something that's important. Racism is not isolated to football. It's endemic and systemic in most countries where a white majority, for the most part, feels threatened by black and brown people like ourselves. And because of this fear, they are forced to reveal the ugliest parts of their being. And that was reflected. So, additionally, the rise of populism around the world. Look at the prime minister in England. Look at the former president of the US. You look at the president in Brazil. These guys have actually thrown gasoline on ignorance and fear and have given these racists a platform where they feel confident coming out of their caves and publicly showing their racism with impunity without accountability across the board. So my take is that there has to be accountability. If you are serious about stopping or ending racism, as I mentioned to you in my video I sent to you, we should declare a war on racism, like the former president of the US declared a war on drugs, and every resource was placed to make sure that that problem was dealt with in a significant way. But that's not happening. What we're seeing is a lot of lip service, a lot of cursory attempts. You know, someone says something racist in the stadium, and you pause, and then you resume play. No, if someone says something racist and you really want to stamp out racism, that person needs to be identified on video, and that person needs to be handcuffed and put in jail. That's how you set the example. Right? You don't continue playing. When you continue playing, the message you're sending is that okay, it's just some troublesome kid in the stadium, some drunk guy. But if you're serious about stamping it out, that's the type of accountability that you need. And that would be my first take. I have more.
Indeed. We want to share with you a former Golden Jaguar who was under the guidance of Coach Shabazz. In fact, it was his master stroke in defeating his native Trinidad and Tobago in 2014, Leon Clark. And he made a very damning statement with regards to the whole issue. And I think he was very much on point. It's almost similar to John Barnes. Let's take a read. Perhaps we're having some technical deficiencies or inefficiencies, as we want to say, problems. But he was alluding to the fact that this racism is not confined to footballers and even the people who have authority and powers. How do we know that they are not racist? And he were referring to the police, the judges, the lawyers, the politicians, and there it is. Yes. So, Coach Shabazz, you want to take a reaction to that statement, how much in context that is? And
But I think we there everybody has their understanding of it. But I think there must be some way for football to respond, right? And I've given this some thought. I've really given this some thought. And we saw recently Jamaica made an effort to recall a lot of players, elite players at that, who were born in the UK to Jamaican parentage. This has become a huge, topic in the Caribbean. Some Caribbean nations is a negative, and we got to be honest that players born outside of the Caribbean parentage, have faced similar sentiments, not in terms of color, but as Coyote pointed out, in terms of prejudice. And you tend to find that when a national team wins with a lot of foreign-born players, it's okay. But when they lose, it's a problem. So we've got to do some introspection as well, because I know that there's that sentiment in the region, and we must stop seeing our people in North America and the UK as people who will send a barrel and send Western Union and MoneyGram, and not be able to contribute in our sporting administrations, in our NGOs, in the different aspects of society. So this is one of the areas I think we need to buckle down on, in how we treat with each other in football, and the whole question of prejudice. The other point I want to quickly point out is, when you look at Jaden Sancho and Saka and Rashford, and they've already at a young age made a lot of money, right? If these guys choose to go back to the underdog country, to the country they roots to play, and we get a mass exodus, not just in the UK, but throughout Europe, people start to go back to their roots country, who have established themselves in the game as a form of international collective process. Our value will start to be realized. This is my thinking.
I certainly agree with you, and that has already, we can say, that process has started. Callum Hudson-Odoi has denounced his citizenship of English, and he's playing. He's going back to play for Ghana. And it was a discussion I think I had with James Paul when I mentioned, think about it in reality. If the black players or players of color in all of Europe, with the wealth they possess, decide to collectively come together and set up a league in Africa, it could become the most powerful league. But of course, it will have to stand up to the challenges. As you know, that will be challenged, because it will be taking away the viewership globally, because it will be a quality football. Um, Coyote, how realistic is a vision of that nature, of Africa having a league and being a quality league? How does that affect the term racism? Is that a racist approach to take? Will you consider that?
I believe one thing that, the oppression of the colonial masters would have given us some ideas about ourselves that that are not necessarily true. Um, and it started with, from my own little research, this Greek ideology of what superiority and inferiority is supposed to look like. Our fight should not be to separate. I think our fight is to view each and every person as equal human beings. Um, once we start separating, we're developing or we instigating a high level of hatred, and this is the very thing that we're fighting to drive out. Because if one if we, and I keep saying it because I don't think that we're fighting against color. People use it. I think that we're fighting against a mentality that was established that if you look this way, you are better, and if you look this way, you are inferior. Now, the people who believe that they're inferior because of the colonial ideas now must try to reestablish themselves and understand their worth and understand who they are. And in doing such, it's not to create separation, but it's to empower themselves and to stand up for righteousness and show those who have this belief system that is not necessarily true, because no human should have dominion over another human. You are only given dominion over fishes and birds and animals. And I think this is one of the reasons why they reduce us to animals, and they use the monkey chants, and because the only way they could feel only way they could feel superior is by reducing us to less than humans. So even though we could go form a league, even though we can do that, I still think they're going to be this war, because one mentality is saying that we are greater, we're better. We are the leaders, we are the superiority of this world, and you are inferior. You are inferior. So even if you try to do something that empower yourself, they will find a way to make the skill of influencing people. As a coach, that's my job, to influence people, which puts me in a position of leadership. It don't matter what I try to do sometimes, it's always seen that it's aggressive, it's too intense. They find a way. Yes, you understand. Yes, you are intelligent enough to do this, but there's always a but. And once I hear the word but, then it just neglected everything that was said before. So I think this is the biggest aspect. How do we get ourselves, who were told that we are not supposed to be at this high level? And this is what you see the aggression is against. Every time somebody that looks this way steps up and becomes something that should be of influence, there is a total aggression against it. And if we stop believing it and start developing our own self, then the things that we do, it should not be seen as separating ourselves, but more of empowering ourselves and then empowering other people to change their mindset. Because that's what we fighting against.
James, your take? Anything to
Yeah,
add before we
quickly,
move to
I,
the
I
audience?
echo and applaud the sentiments shared by Brother Coyote and Coach Raz, that ultimately, if we really feel and believe that all humans are created equal, that regardless of your skin color, your religion, your sexual orientation, your gender, that by virtue of you being a human being, you deserve respect, right? And what we're seeing among races is a fundamental lack of respect for human beings that don't look like that, right? So that's the first thing we've got to have. The other thing I want to point out is that diversity works. We have seen examples in the NBA, for example, in the USA, in Major League Baseball in the USA, when several decades ago, these were all white leagues, and they excluded black players and brown players who had to have their own leagues. But the business people realized that they could not do that. It was not good business to be racist. And so they were forced to include these players, and we see the results. You've got two of the most popular and lucrative sports and organizations in the world in terms of the NBA and Major League Baseball. So diversity works, right? So the other thing I want to point out is power. You cannot be racist unless you've got the power to take something away from the person you're oppressing, right? And the point you made earlier, the suggestions of Africans going to Africa and forming our own thing and so on, it sounds good, but it, as Coyote mentions, you're actually doing exactly what they're doing, right? We were here, our ancestors contributed to the development and wealth of Europe and the USA. We have a right to be here. We've got to figure out how to become owners. We've got to understand that it's about power. And when you have power, you can hold racists accountable because they're not going to mess with you, right? They will disrespect you because they perceive you, even though you're wealthy, as not being privileged, as being less than them. And that thought, that feeling is reinforced when there is no accountability when they commit racist acts. So those would be my points regarding the quote and comments made by my panelists.
Real football vibes, keeping the beautiful game real and inviting your comments too. Coach Jamal Shabazz, former national player James Paul, and the coach, former national midfielder Coyote McKinney, together with yours truly, Raswadada. We're looking at racism in football and its impact and its effect. What took place last Sunday in England before the game and after the game apparently stretched across the Atlantic and it touched our own close neighbors, Trinidad and Tobago. Coach Shabazz, I don't know if you're aware of that situation and the fact that the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association had to appeal to CONCACAF for some extra security. And we saw last night, it was in their second game, they went down to El Salvador 2-0. Do you honestly think that the effects of the racist stance and chants by the Mexicans, who we would want to think it were, had some effect on that result?
Well, no, I don't think so. I know most of these lads, they're tough mentally, and a lot of times players, even in the UK, complain is not because they're really, demoralized by the taunts, but they want to bring awareness, and listening to Kyrie and James, I just want to clarify. I didn't agree with you, Ross, in terms of going and set up a league. I still maintain, though, that our players born outside of the Caribbean, should start to consider because we've seen in players like the Court brothers, Neil Dans, and they waited a bit to play for Guyana. We've seen with other players too until their opportunity to play for the UK all but vanished. And maybe we on our side also didn't communicate as aggressively as Jamaica has done. But I think there's not one particular response. Is when you look at the civil rights struggle, which James Paul is very aware of in the U.S., it had Malcolm X, but it had Martin Luther King. It had the Black Panthers. It they were different, and we will always find different forms of resistance. Because of temperament and culture, as Coyote pointed out. There are some of us who will turn the other cheek, and ideologically, we feel that will bring about a certain amount of divine and spiritual strength. But there are some of us who will quote the verse in the Bible where Jesus say, sell your robe and buy a sword, and therefore I see Coyote smile because for years yet I have been having, these discussions. And to come to the point with the Trinidad and Tobago team, a lot of these guys, and for me, if I'm coaching out there and they make racist remarks to me, I will respond. Maybe not in the way they would respond, but I don't see myself cowing in fear. I had a situation in Trinidad and Tobago where we were coaching against a team, and the coach was calling the referees and thing bloody natives. And I said to the referees, ref, don't afraid this man, them fellas bring me here in chains, and he reported me to the match commissioner, right? And I asked the match commissioner, asked me, did you make that statement? I said, did they or did they not bring us in chains? You know? And this was my way of fighting. This was my way because nobody cared to complain that he called the referees bloody natives.
Indeed. I must admit, even in my time playing here too, there was some degree of racism, and it seems to be here, there, and everywhere. But I'm wondering, as I was communicating with someone out in England, and he was reminding me about the genesis of the sport, how it started in particular in Italy and England, where it before there were rules, regulations, where it was a whole community opposing another community and marching through the streets, and of course there were no rules, so it was bloodied at times. It was real life threatening at times. It was a war. So the individual was saying perhaps it's in the DNA of English fans to behave that way. If you look back at the genesis where it started, Coyote, you share that view. You think that has some credence there?
I firmly believe like all these behaviors that you're seeing is it's really and truly how you were trained, how you were brought up. Just like me being brought up in the Caribbean with parents of what would say that believe in the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. We were taught a certain behavior.
Okay.
That culture guided me to being selfless in certain behaviors, seeing everybody as I have different races in my family too. So I never really understood this because of my mindset. What has happened though, and I'll continue to go back to this, is what you're seeing is a mentality. It's not just a country. It's a mentality. It's somebody believing in all the teachings that they are better. This is their mindset. They are better. It doesn't matter what you are capable of doing. They have this belief that it was a natural endowment on them to be superior. So if they look a certain way, if they speak a certain way, ultimately they would have seen as superior. Anybody else that looked opposite to that was seen as inferior. We have, if we're gonna change, and I always say I don't believe changes in near future, because to change is to first change your mentality. I always know once you become comfortable with something, once you can tolerate something, it's hard to change. So they have been very comfortable in their skin and comfortable with what they're able to get away with. That it's very difficult for them to change. Who will have to change? The people who believe an idea that is not true, and that is us. We have been given an idea about ourselves that is not necessarily true. So we have to change that idea. And once we change that idea and we create this mentality where we see ourselves as important, because ideology forms philosophy, and philosophy are oftentimes conformed by theology. So even with some of these theologians, if you don't pay attention, you will find yourself being in the same position as you were in with your colonial masters. So I feel it's very important to understand who you are, what your value is. And until that change, nothing will change. They will put all these things in place. You are seeing it openly. You've seen it on TV. You see people saying it and apologizing. You try kneeling, you try everything, yet people continue to find a way. And I go with court. We worried about the man who's saying it in front of your face. But the devil know if he tell you to do something, he ain't gonna do it. So he have to dress you up nice. And when you say it and you say it very charismatic, you might get me to believe what you're saying. But they don't believe that is true. And I think it's Coach Jamar used to use it, or your great friend Grenville. He said you could take a pig and put on a nice suit, a two-piece suit, dress him up, put on lipstick. The moment the pig see the mud, that is his culture. He will go right back in the mud with a fancy suit. I think the important thing, I think the most important thing for us is to really understand our value. So maybe we have to go back from the history, from where this started, and we might have to change that. We might have to change the history that was taught to us. We might have to change the language in how we speak. We might have to change the way we dress to promote ourselves as influencers and leaders, because that was given to us. And it's not truly a representation of our culture. It's not a true representation of us as a people. That was given to us by colonialization. So as long as we follow something that wasn't given for us to empower us, then we always going to be playing second fiddle. And every time we believe that we could be better, they will find a way to stamp us down. Look at history. Every black person that have taken the power to say that we're better than we are, what happened? That's what I say about that.
Indeed, there's some conspiracy theory, as they would call it, being spread around with regards to 4 leaders who died or were murdered or assassinated, the latest being the Haitian. And it's all being theorized that the fact that they have refused to conform to the COVID mandates and protocols, um, they have lost their lives. But like you said, it's educational reform it must start with, and I certainly agree with you. The educational curriculum within the region needs to be seriously addressed, and even within the cultures of the respective ethnicity, as opposed to what has been fed or given to us by the Caucasian. James, you like to touch on the educational reform, how imperative that is in changing the course of the path that we're treading on presently?
Absolutely. Education is always important. But a lot of us have been miseducated, right? We believe that white is right. And even though we don't look white, our actions actually indicate that we're behaving just like the white oppressor did, right? And that's a separate problem. It's another show. But I want to back up a few centuries and go back to the worst crime against humanity, which is slavery, the enslavement of people that look like us, right, by white people. And that was rooted in racism, right? However, how was slavery abolished? It took people who shared a value, the same values of all colors. Right? It wasn't only black people who were struggling and fighting against slavery, Tuffy and Pamela and Amon and the heroes of Trinidad and the Caribbean, but they were white abolitionists. And without that collaboration of like-minded people of every race, which is the essence of equality, that we all believe in this value of respect and for everyone, regardless of skin color. And if that's not happening, and that was not happening with slavery, now again, it's not happening with the racism in football. So like-minded people from the grassroots to the boardrooms of FIFA have to collaborate and come up with a way of abolishing racism just as slavery was abolished. So let's look beyond color and let's identify people who share our values, who believe that racism is immoral and wrong and has no place in the 21st century or any society. We need to come together and demonstrate that we want to abolish it like we abolished slavery. And that would be my recommendation for a long-lasting solution, and not just something that happened. Okay, you have a demonstration, you have a march, you have a protest, and then next year somebody is stepping on the knee of another black person's hand, right? I made the analogy in my video commentary to you, Brother Ras, that the knees of racist football fans in Europe and around the world, that knee hovers over the necks of black footballers. It's there. It's always there. Even the ones that are successful. And you know when it comes down? It comes down when they miss 3 penalty kicks, right? And that knee came down on the collective necks of not only those 3 black football players who are wealthy, but of every black football player playing in a racist country. So we got to be aware of that. Those are my points.
James, would you say you are disappointed, like I am, not hearing the word governing body for the sport coming out and strongly condemning these actions here in England and even in America?
Well, I'm not surprised, because remember, most people in power do a risk assessment, right? And if I don't respect you, I don't believe that you have got the power to change my reality, which is my wealth, to threaten my freedom, my wealth, right, or my life. If I don't believe that you have that ability, then I can just give you a little service whenever you are pressed. But I don't have to resolve your issue because you're not a threat to me, right? So we need to understand the fundamentals of power, which is that as a group of black and brown people, that we have to find a way to be powerful, more or as powerful, so that we can threaten. They're not going to mess with us. We can either do it Malcolm's way, as Coach Sabat says, or we could do it Brother Malcolm's way, right? But either way, you're going to be threatened if you don't come around and respect us, right? So we have to develop that power. Power is essential for success in anything in a significant way. So that would be my take on it.
Indeed,
Uh,
FIFA is a very powerful organization in the world with over 200 countries affiliated, and they give out millions of dollars every year to footballing nations. And I don't recall ever hearing that they're in the red. That's a powerful organization. Coach Abbas, anything you'd
yeah,
like to
well,
add to that?
I wanted to add to what James was saying. And again, we in the Caribbean have a duty to do what we can do. And while the answers and the response must be multifaceted, I think the Caribbean associations and football federations, we've got to look to our own, in terms of employment. We've got to build our coaches. We've got to expose our coaches. There's this thing, one of the things that prompted me to come to Guyana was when Jack Warner, Mr. Warner, and the deceased Captain Borrell, they had this ideological perspective that a Caribbean coach cannot take any of the Caribbean nations far in any of the high level tournaments, you know? And there was the opportunity provided by Guyana, right? And I took the opportunity and we collectively, you know, created a brand called it Golden Jaguars, and the same across the region. We find this thing about our coaches not working. The officials like to say, well, the local coaches have no experience. But how will you get experience
Experience. You
if
know
you
what?
don't get the opportunity, right?
Right.
And the other aspect of it is that, again, how can we address it? We've got to send our young coaches on attachment courses, let them see other coaches work. This is not a racial move. This is an important incubation move for our survival, because we're not, as coaches, going to get the jobs in Europe. We're not going to get the big jobs in other parts of the world. So we've got to get our people ready, okay, to be able to hold at least our own jobs. And this is important. They say charity begins at home. The Prophet, peace be upon him, say the best charity is the charity to your family. So it is important. And the onus on Caribbean football federations to fight racism is to develop and give employment to our coaches in the region. And I say that against the backdrop of a region that has been divided. When you look at Guyana, the colonial master made the division between the Amerindian, the Indian, and the Africans in particular. They've gone to these tribes and taught us how different we are. And this divisiveness contributes. So based on what Coyote and James is saying, the collective action is a part of fighting it as well. Like-minded people of different races not falling victim to the trap. Because when you look at the common denominator, the colonial master, he or she has their agenda.
Indeed, I certainly agree with you on that in the whole division of a people. And this is something that we here at the Real Football Vibes have talked about, and Coyotes could concur as well, where we talk about our own coaches having the opportunities to produce and develop our national football program, mainly because of the knowledge and of the culture of the people being naturally part of the coach, as opposed to bringing a coach from another culture who has to adapt. And it's a whole long, drawn out process. But Jamaica has taken the lead. Tito Whitmore is doing tremendously well with Jamaican team, and maybe Captain Burrell Musi turning, as they would say, in his grave to see that as one. But yes, Jack Warner, with all his baggages, as one would say, must be given credit for giving power to the Caribbean, to a big zone like CONCACAF, when we are the most members. He did that in 91 when he assumed the leadership, and the Caribbean were, were more on the receiving end in terms of development. So what you're saying there with regards to developing our own people, we as a region can only be strong if the Caribbean Football Union is strong. And at the moment, it's very weak. And perhaps that's why our football is where it's at, because there's not a Jack Warner there to make certain things happen, and we get the benefits of what is being given. Having said that, and looking at what transpired there in England over the weekend gone, and now spilling over into Mexico, Trinidad situation, some might be surprised, but it has to do with the suppression of the media information. But Mexico and Argentina are two countries that are heavily populated with people of African descent, but that has been suppressed, even the opportunities for those people. So, like you say, it has to start with these governments, and how it's going to start. I don't know. I don't know if Coyote might have some ideas like how we go about doing this, even from a football perspective.
Um, I, I quote Socrates, not because I like him, but I quote him when he said that people should be governed by those that are greatest in knowledge. And we know ancient times would have said, slaves were never given the opportunity to be educated. They tried their utmost best to make sure that they didn't learn to read and write and all these things. Why would he say that? Because, like I said, it was an idea of what inferiority and what superiority should look like, and we are still governed by those ideas still today. And the only way change can come about is when we start seeing ourselves as leaders. We start seeing ourselves as influencers. We start seeing ourselves as owners. We start seeing ourselves not as employees, but as employers. We see ourselves as employees, and we have this desire to just work for people and to always be at the bottom. And these opportunities will not be given to you from your own, because they're still governed by these ideas. And they always they use it and they don't even know they use it. Oh, this person have more experience. Oh, this person has more knowledge. Well, how did they get the knowledge? How did they get the experience? When will what you have get the experience? When will they get the knowledge if you don't put them in the position of power, in the position of influence? The world is governed by the ideology and the philosophy of ancient Greek, and this was passed down to Rome. And Rome, which was the most powerful nation in the world, who colonialized this whole world probably. And because of the immorality, they were destroyed. And now they would have given it to all of these different countries, which came and colonialized your very Caribbean. So we are
Coyote,
fueled by those ideas too. And
if I
if
may
we,
interject,
yeah,
you stressed on Greece and Greek philosophies, which the
yeah,
world. But there's history that would show you that Greek got their knowledge, or Greece got their knowledge from Egypt, from Africa. That's where they got their knowledge from. So
wow. So
where we are.
we
But we're
we
going to take a slight diversion on real football vibes from the topic today and go to something that involves you, Coyote, where we try to educate on this program. And we're going to share with you a coaching tip today, how you do the transition from attack to defense in the offensive third. And Coach Coyote McKinnon has been giving us some coaching tips. And so we look at how one can transit from the attack to defense in the offensive third.
And we are here in angles. See how the 6 come across to get in front of the 9. The 4 is in an angle. 5 here. The 3 is in line with the 6. Now look at this situation. Yes, we're in offense, but we still have space to play. See? If the ball is able to transfer here, okay, this player comes, this player can make runs. So we're not eliminating our offensive opportunities by taking up these positions when we are in offense. But like I said, most teams will lose and win a game in the transition moment.
Yes, Coach Coyote, thanks again. James, you were wanting to add something just before we went out? Got the impression that you were.
Just some closing remarks. I wanted to talk about the issue of division. that we got Coach Abbas talked about the division between homegrown, players and foreign-born players, right? We're talking on this show about white on black and brown on black racism. It's all about division. So the world, as Coyote hinted at, needs a paradigm shift, right? The divide and conquer ethos of management or even colonialization needs to be abandoned, right? We've got to shift because right now in this world, we've made so many advances. We live in the internet age where there's access to a lot of information. We've got two billionaires competing to go to Mars, right? So there are a lot of great things happening. However, there are a lot of things that we still have a lot of ground to cover to live up to a lot of the things that are written in the Constitution of FIFA and of England, of the USA, and Guyana, right? Everyone preaches equality, but when they get into power, they divide the rule, right? So there's hypocrisy. We have the grassroots people have to become educated and informed and be a part of that struggle to ensure that we put the right people in positions, not the people who are going to say one thing and then do something else. And if we put someone in a position of power where they say something and do something else, we have to have the resources and the means to take down the power. So the future leaders know that they've got to say and do what they say, right? So I think the grassroots in every federation and in every country politically have to become educated and involved. You can't just complain. You've got to figure out what's going on. You can't say, well, I don't know. There's information everywhere. The world's nothing, right? So it's important that we teach our children that they need to be independent thinkers and they need to do their research and challenge. Even if it's I remember back in the day, basically, our coaches were gods. I dare not, if I heard a coach say something that I thought was wrong as a young player in the team, I would not say a word. And I think that's bad, right? Because our young people need to be, especially in this age, where coaches can learn from players. Players need to feel empowered to say something. So that would be my take.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, time has certainly caught up with us. The hour has flew by, as one would say. And so I give you, gentlemen, the honor and privilege in giving your parting words and thoughts. But I'll start with Coach Shabazz. But I will ask the question that is being asked around the football fraternity now. And more or less put you in the spot, Coach. There's a talk and a call for you to return to Guyana to continue the good works that you would have done. Is there any likelihood that Jamal Shabazz will respond in the affirmative to return to continue those works? And your final parting words as well.
Well,
Yeah,
first
sorry,
of all, I was
so much details. And
first of
yes,
all, first of all, I was just born in Trinidad.
you always talk of your dual citizenship in Guyana and Trinidad. Oh, same thing with us.
I see myself as a Caribbean man and very, very much Guyanese.
Easy enough. Wow. I'm not hearing. Apparently, we're having some technical difficulties there with the hookup with Coach Sabaz. Coach Coyote, your
Yeah,
parting words?
I'll say as a man thinketh, so is he. You must control. You must control how you see yourself and um, and empower yourself. It's the responsibility is on you, the individual, to see yourself as important, to see yourself as an influencer, to see yourself as a unique person, which with traits that nobody else has, and skill set that nobody else has. So once we do that, then we're able to abolish color. We're able to abolish color, and we need to reinforce a mindset that empower us to be influencers.
Thank you very much, Coach. And again, heartfelt gratitude for you sharing your time with us on Real Football Vibes. James Paul, your parting words there from
Yeah, my
New York.
parting words would, yes, sir. My parting word would be to all the victims of racism, especially these three talented English footballers, Sekou, uh, Sancho, and the other name, Luigi, is that struggle against oppression is a marathon. It took decades, it took centuries to defeat slavery, the institution of slavery. Racism still persists and probably will for centuries. We got to learn from our mistakes, right? And these players need to hold themselves accountable as well. I do not for any second condone the despicable racist remarks. But as professionals, if you're in a position to close the deal and the odds are in your favor of closing the deal, you have to close the deal, right? So as professionals, I know they will hold themselves accountable and they will do better. I want to encourage them and support them to come back again and show the world that they are more than just three young men who missed three critical penalties for English football. So that would be my things. To have them have a long-term perspective that it's a marathon. This is just a little hurdle along the way, but I think they have the talent and they've got the support of the world that I really predict they will come back and be even bigger than they are right now.
Thank you very much, James Paul. Is Coach Shabazz still on, or is he continue to have his technical deficiencies there? Is hoping to have some final parting words from Coach Shabazz, but apparently he has been, I should say, disconnected. But again, gentlemen, thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much for being part of Real Football Vibes here today. Keeping it real on the beautiful game, and wishing you the best of the rest for this Friday, and looking forward to having you again on Real Football Vibes, where we keep it real on the beautiful game. So long, everyone. Have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Physical harm and racism since its draw against Mexico in the CONCACAF Gold Cup on Saturday night. Security around the team in Texas has been heightened, with FIFA and CONCACAF promising to act after the TTFA lodged an official letter of concern. Trinidad and Tobago has been sucked into this whirlpool of racism that has plagued global football. 3 times on Saturday in TNT's Gold Cup match against Mexico, this CONCACAF anti-discrimination message flashed across the big screen. The game was stopped. It was in response to Mexican fans shouting racial slurs and throwing bottles at TNT footballers. But it wasn't an isolated incident. These images are from 6 years ago, trash being thrown at Jovan Jones. This time it got a lot more serious. Head coach Angus Eve told Guardian Media on Monday, Trinidad and Tobago's football team in Miami has had its security reinforced after several players have gotten death threats after the draw. We have been told that TTFA has written to both FIFA and CONCACAF, outlining concerns of death threats, racism and attempts to physically harm TNT's players, continued into the weekend. It didn't stop at the final whistle. Mexican fans bombarded the TTFA's Facebook page and TNT Olympic Committee's social media platforms, often with verbal abuse, obscene language, racist statements, and calling TNT's footballers monkeys.